we're talking about the game of relationships tonight. So let me just start by setting the tone and going through a few administrational things. So basically, everything that I do is based on 3 principles, which is that problems happen. We can't solve a problem, like Einstein said, we can't solve a problem from the same level of thinking. So it starts with challenging your thinking. The second one is we need to accept ourselves, we need to accept others, and we need to accept the reality of whatever the circumstances is. So it's first challenge thinking, accept whatever we have, ourselves, others, and the reality. And then the last one is that we need to evolve, is that life is about, if you look at what death is, it's stagnation. And so we need to evolve, and our relationships need to evolve. So the aim of these 5 days is to provoke you to think differently about relationships. So what I'm here to do is to challenge what you think and know about relationships. But it's also accepting. It's accepting that you are enough as you are here, and there's nothing about you that needs to change, and life isn't going to change. So we need to change our route, how we navigate relationships. Okay, so there's 3 core things that I believe are at the root of the relationship journey. And that is to think free. So as in thinking free of dogma, ignorance, and drama, emotional biases. To be strong, to tell the story that makes you strong, and to share your joy. So we connect from a place that's more positive, that's stronger, and purer, as opposed to connecting from like a relationship trying to fix someone or make someone stronger. Right, so I'm going to, in the chat, if you can put in, when you think of the game of relationships, and we're not talking about being a player, but we're talking about game of relationships being an infinite game that we all play. How do we play that game? Like, what's the strategy? Or typically, if you think about, is that quite an abstract question? So if you think about like, what's the strategy? I'm getting a lot of messages. So I think there are people who can't get in. So I'm just going to check on that. But if you put in the chat, like, what do you think when you think of playing the game of relationships? What comes up for you? So what we've covered so far is basically there's 3 key principles, which is to challenge your thinking, because every problem is at the level of, the solution is at a different level of thinking, as Einstein said. Accept who you are, accept others, and accept reality, and evolve, because life is about, life is moving. And when we stop, when we stagnate, that's really death. Okay. Then there's three key things that I really want to talk about over these 5 days. That is think free of dogma, free of ignorance, free of drama, be strong, tell the story that makes you strong, and share the joy so that we connect from positive basis. Okay, so we're all in this together. This is a relationship journey, and we're all gathered because we're all interested in understanding what to do. And I'm going to talk about where I think we're in a relationship age of confusion. And so we are pioneers. We are in a new So I'm going to talk more about this, but I think we are a generation where everything's changing and we have to be the ones to learn how to navigate through it. So this is going to be less of a discussion. These are going to be less of a discussion than we normally have in a meetup because there's so much to cover. I've spent ages of what do I put in and what do I cut down? But I wanted to make it something that you could walk away from having understood a couple of three key concepts. Okay, so this has been recorded. It's been recorded in video and audio. I'm not going to put out the videos because this is more about being experiential. So what I mean is I'm not putting out the audios or the videos because this is about being experiential. It's about being here. I may use some of it if I run this again. I'm going to probably share bits to let people have a taster of it. But it's going to be too much to edit it all and put it all out. Okay, so what else do we need to go? Right, so there's going to be some. So let's talk about. We're here, like I said, we're in this together. So we have to, I think, like to set the tone for this is how we can support each other to be stronger together. Is at times when there's interaction, when there's conversation, we can all gain from each other. None of us is right. None of us has all the answers, but it's in the friction of different ideas and different perspectives that will work out the solutions. So I'm going to ask 4 things of you, really, to be vulnerable, as in sharing what you think, sharing who you are, to be accepting. No one needs to be judged or criticized. We all need to be accepted, to be open to new ideas. And if you are sharing or we're talking here, to be as brief as you can so we can cover as much. Okay, so if you're comfortable, if you can put if you put the video on so we can connect to you. Also, if you can, there's reactions you can share or thumbs up or something like that if you don't quite understand. I'm not going to be looking too much in the chat because I've got a lot to cover, but you can share your insights and your thoughts in the chat. And there are people with different perspectives who can share and who can maybe answer some questions, and I will look at them later and hopefully address them. But we've got people, so if we're looking at Sandra, Betty, Nicole, have been here, Janos have been here for most of the last year when we've been covering most of these ideas. So who kind of know what I mean. Okay, so I want to talk about this three things that people normally say about just my style, which maybe if you're not used to me. One is that people sound very cold and logical, and I talk about relationships in a very cold and logical way. And there's a reason for that, because I think the way, well, just because it's naturally how I think, but also the reason we get into relationships is for how we feel. The way we judge how a relationship's going is how we feel. But the problem a lot of people have is they're trying to navigate the relationship from how they feel, and that's why they get lost. So navigation, as in the logical steps and what makes sense, is about logic. Because if you try to use a sat nav based on what was the prettiest route and what made you feel best, you get totally lost. And I think that's why so many people get lost in relationships. Okay, so the other thing is sometimes I'm told I'm too negative about relationships. But this often comes from people that don't have a lot of faith, because I genuinely believe that there's always something better, and I think things are going to work out. But I think the thing that stops us is problems. So I talk a lot about problems because I figure if you get rid of the problems, you're fine and you'll know what to do. And the other thing is that I talk very much in abstract. And if you look on the internet, the most popular videos, the most popular books are very concrete. They tell you if someone does X, you do Y. If this is the text you send, this is how you have to be. But when you're at the level of content, it's like being in the maze. So if you're in content, there's endless dead ends. And it's unique. And this is why so many people look at, they might have this relationship, this relationship, but they don't see the common thread. And they don't see the common thread because the situations all look different. But if you look, why does that happen? What does that happen? What's the dynamic underneath that? So if you look at the context, it puts the content, it makes sense of the content. So there's basically 7 problems in a relationship, 7 problems, 7 skills that you need to develop. So the reason it's abstract is because it's universal to everyone. If you look at the abstract, it's like being above the maze where you can see the whole picture and you can see the path out. Okay. Right. Before I go any further, I just wanted to, I'm aware it's someone's birthday. I can't sing. I don't know if anyone's a good singer here, but if we can sing happy birthday to Gail. Ready? If you can unmute yourself, because you really don't want to hear me singing on my own. Happy birthday
to you. Happy birthday
to you. Happy
birthday, dear Gail.
Happy birthday to you. See, I can't even.
And
I can't.
where is Gail? Oh,
I can't even
happy
remember the
birthday.
words to happy birthday. Okay.
Thank you very much, all of you.
We're honoured that you've decided to share your birthday evening with us.
I know, I'm like crazy.
Okay. Right. So
it's better in the pub, in the pub, Rob. Up in our meeting room.
Gail
Would have been
was in one of
better.
my first groups, which was an in-person group, and that ran for about a year, 18 months, wasn't it?
Yeah, 18 months. I was at the first one and the last one. Talk about loyalty, huh? Anyway, thanks a lot.
Okay, right. So let's go. Where are we going to go? Okay, so my central thesis is that we've all been sold a lie that sets us up to fail in relationships. And it's a lie that makes us feel that we're the one at fault. So if you look at, we live in a blame judicial system, a legal system, so that the legal system is based on who's wrong. So when it comes to divorce, there has to be someone at fault, apart from now they've got the new quickie divorce. So that structure shows what we really think is that a relationship breakup is individual error, that there's something wrong. And this is one of the things that when you look at the level of content, people go like, the relationship failed, but it looks like it was because of this person. It looks like it was because of this situation. But actually, and what I saw because of seeing lots and lots of different people going through the same dynamics, is it's not the individuals, but it's the individuals on the default relationship path. If you do what, like the default program that we're given to run on relationships, then that's basically what will happen. So I'm just gonna if I can share my screen. Usually, if we're looking at the default relationship graph, it's going to run. Okay, so on this side, we've got satisfaction. And we've got over time. And so the default goes something like this. to a decline. Okay, so if you do nothing else and you just do the relationship the way everyone else does the relationship, let me turn it around so it makes sense. No, that's basically what's going to happen in relationships. So there's a kind of a line, and below that line, it drains us. And above that line, it enriches our life. And so a relationship that drains us, sooner or later, one of us is going to give up on it, because eventually we're going to, what's the point of being in a relationship like that? A relationship that enriches us is one that we're going to want to stay in. It works for both parties. So our purpose is to try and change that curve, and it's going to be ups and downs, but if we can keep it where it's enriching, then the relationship is going to be more successful. Does that make sense? Okay, so there's, so if you think about it, there's never been a time when there's more single people. Usually, like if you go back 150, 200 years, there would be 150 people in the village. There'd probably be 2 or 3 people that would be a right kind of age, social status and whatever that you could pick from. We have access to more people. And not only that, but we have, through dating apps, there is never been easier access to people that you know are single, that you know are looking for a partner. So the fact that most people find dating confusing and frustrating, the fact that relationships end up with a lack of connection and a disconnection, to me signifies that there's a problem with the way that we're doing relationships. So my goal over the next 5 days is to try and unravel the mysteries of the way that people have tied themselves up in knots about relationships, so that we can see the path to build that kind of relationship. And a relationship is probably the most difficult thing that we'll do. But it doesn't have to, it can be simple. It's not easy, but it can be simple, because it's natural, one human connecting to another human. Okay, so let's think about dating. Now, millions of people go online, read books to date more effectively. And there's loads of books that will tell you what text to send, how to get laid, what are the rules that you need to have to get the guy, and all these kind of things. But basically, most of them start from the premise that you're not good enough. They start that you have to be this way, you have to say this thing, or do something different to get someone to love you. And so whether it's consciously or unconsciously, they're telling you that you're not good enough. So what most people do is pretend to be something to get someone. And then years later, we wonder why we're in unhappy relationships and we don't have good communication. Okay, so is it everyone dating? Is anyone in a relationship, or are we mostly dating or looking for someone? If you just put it in the chat. Okay. So has anyone been on a dating site? Okay. Has anyone come across someone really rude or some angry dickhead who's just makes it unpleasant? Okay, why? So we're in the relationship age of confusion. And confusion is the limbo state between something we know and something like when we know something and the old way, when the old way is broken down. So we used to be comfortable with a relationship like this. So we've come out of the age of control. And we're now looking for a relationship like this kind of level. And so the growth from there to there is really about the frameworks that we use, the assumptions that we have, and the beliefs that we hold. So the change from there to there is one of expectations. Okay, so the problem is that because we've gone from, we're expecting more, but our framework isn't delivering that, what we've now got is confusion. So it's the relationship age of confusion. Now, if you're confused for a long time, then what happens is you get frustrated. And when you're frustrated and you keep trying something and it doesn't work, what happens is you start to despair. And if you stay stuck in despair for long enough and you can't see any way out, then what happens is you get bitter. So there are a lot of people who are really bitter about relationships. So there's red pill theory, there's men going their own way, there's women's equivalents, there's men hating women, women hating men. So you've got kind of like the red pill thing. There's a lot of people despair who are giving up on relationships and they go, oh, relationships don't work and I'll just have a friend with benefits, but yet they still really want the relationship. And so then there's a lot of frustrated people. So all of the nasty messages, all of the nasty behavior on dating sites is really people who are in this zone because they're using the default program for relationships and it's leading them into a dead end for what their expectations are. So the solution is to get clarity. And that's what we're going to try and do over the next 5 days. So clarity gives you the understanding of what to do. On itself, it's not enough because you also need the capacity. So the capacity is the emotional ability to cope, the emotional ability to be vulnerable, the emotional ability to do all of the things that you need to do in a relationship. So we might know in communication what to say, we might know how to say it, but if we're too scared to say it, if we're too anxious to do it, then we're not going to be able to do it. So the next level is competence. If we have the emotional capability to succeed in that relationship journey, next level is the skills to do it. And then when we have the skills to do it, we get the confidence. And when we have confidence, we have the certainty that we can do it. But the problem with right now is that a lot of people are wanting to jump from frustrated or confused or despair to confident. And you can't be confident, like, well, you can, but confidence without competence is just a recipe for disaster. So you have to have the foundations. So you have to have the right framework. You have to have the emotional capability. You have to have the competence and the relationship skills to be able to do it. And then if you have the confidence, it's well placed. So I think the future is the age of choice, meaning that we can have the relationships that we want. They don't, in the age of control, relationships had to be normal, like heterosexual. There had to be there was an expectation you were going to have children, and relationships followed the same pattern. Right. So the problem with dating is not that people don't want to settle down. It's not that people don't want relationships. It's not even the apps. It's the fact that people are running a default program of relationships, the default way of using the apps. And that is, who do I have to be loved? So in the chat, if you could type someone in the public eye that you feel a connection with, someone that you feel a connection from how they portray themselves.
When you say the public eye, Rob, do you mean you mean a well-known figure?
Yeah, someone that we would kind of know.
Okay.
Or even, who do you feel connected with? Someone that maybe not family, or you have a deep relationship, or a friend, a deep relationship with, but someone that you feel, I feel a connection with them. And if you think about, what is it that makes you feel connected?
Connected just as another person, or connected in a...
Okay, so I'm thinking, look at what Princess Di died, like that public outpouring, because people felt a connection. Who can remember Gazza when in the World Cup, when he was crying? And so it tends to be, okay, Ramius, Mickey Flanagan. And so it tends to be, if you think about why you feel connection with them, it's usually the people that aren't perfect. It's the flaws and the foibles that we connect to, because that's what makes someone human. And yet everyone on these, like in dating, is trying to present by being perfect, trying to present that they're flawless. And it's the inability to be vulnerable that makes that enables you to connect to them. So really, when I'm talking about like all this dating advice and relationship advice, it's really, we're born this tiny helpless baby that's incapable of looking for himself. No, we know nothing. Everyone seems to know more than us. Everyone seems to be stronger and be more capable. And so we learn that other people know more than us, that everyone else knows more than us. And the world is kind of started a long time before we were in it. So this world was in full flow, and we have these huge governments, huge monolithic organizations. And in comparison, we feel tiny, we feel inadequate, we feel small, like we're this tiny cog, and there's this big company, this big government, and we feel like we have to fit in, we have to do what other people tell us to do. But if you look, that essentially the only living thing are individuals. Governments and organizations only exist while we believe in them and while we agree with the premise. They're agreements that because they're tools for us, but we often feel like they're instruments of them. So this is me being abstract again. But there's a critical distinction in this, because implicitly or explicitly, most ideas that you've come across haven't really challenged this. They work on that assumption. And so the base of most relationship advice and dating advice is that the relationship is the goal. But the relationship is the vehicle for two people. The relationship is a shared understanding, a shared agreement for the health of individuals. So if you imagine, I don't know if anyone plays golf, but you understand the idea that you've got this big long fairway, you've got the green, and you've got the hole. So if you imagine in golf that you were aiming for the green, but not the hole, because most golfers, when you're like 100 yards out or so, you aim for the green rather than the actual hole, because the hole is too precise, right? But when you get close up, if you were to just aim for the green, you'd never like be able to manage where are you going, because it's too big a target. There's no specific place that's success. So, okay. So in the chat, what are you looking for from a relationship? What is the relationship serving to give to you? I believe that what we really want is connection. Because connection, without connection, we're just this individual that's flying through this spinning planet without any meaning. And so it's connection that gives our life meaning. It's how we make sense of what we're doing. So what we really crave isn't the relationship. The relationship is lazy thinking for connection. The relationship is the vehicle for connection. What we really want is connection, because so many people are like, it's the relationship. It's not the relationship, because you know, if you have a shitty relationship, you're going to have a shitty experience. It's the quality, and what determines the quality of the relationship is the level of connection. A relationship is the space between two people. When we're connected, that space is reduced and it's more positive. When we're disconnected, that space is increased and it's more negative. Okay, so the point of that is that if we understand that, we've got a basis that we can simplify relationships, because it becomes the guiding principle of how connected do we feel? How does this move us more connected or less connected? Okay, so Facebook apparently has 50,000 plus data points on every user. So now that's a huge amount of information. They track what we browse, they track what we buy, what jobs we do, what groups, what we're interested in, what groups we like, who is in our network. And they know, and what they've perfected more than anyone else, is they know that one day we're not interested in buying something, but 3 months from now, we're in the market for it. And they know when to show us ads. They know what to show us when. And they are insanely obsessed with us, with how do we feel, what we're doing. And they want to understand us like from moment to moment. Who's been in a relationship where their partner has been that obsessed with how they are feeling, who they are right that moment? Not so much. Okay, so that downward curve of relationships is because we think we know our partner, because we know what they said yesterday. we think we know because of what they liked 3 months ago. And we lose interest in them because we assume that we know who they are. So a relationship is the space between us. It's a living, breathing dynamic that changes moment to moment. Okay, who has plants? Right, so I have this very sickly, poor looking plant. Who kills plants?
People
And how do you kill them?
not looking after them.
Overwatering.
Yeah. Too much or too little attention in the wrong environment. Okay. So if you don't nurture a plant, you kill it. Who's killed a relationship?
Always us. Always us. Because we're not paying attention for certain signs. Sometimes to say, okay, that's too much. Sometimes that's not enough anymore.
Okay, so it can feel that relationships are overwhelming. So it can feel that relationships are overwhelming. And if you try and fix it from the level of content, you're going to have endless problems, endless things that you just don't understand and you're not able to fix. But if you focus on the context, it's a few like key performance indicators that you need to monitor and understand. So it becomes manageable. Now, most people are frustrated with relationships because they want easy. So they want to believe that you meet this perfect person and that everything's plain sailing. And it's the same lie that we want to believe about relationship, about money, that if you win a lottery, that everything's going to work out perfectly. But research shows that most lottery winners, 1 year after winning the lottery, are less happy than before they won it. Because what they hadn't accounted for was all the extra stress and the hassles that come with the money. So in exactly the same way, there's lots of single people that are just wishing that if they could just meet this right person. But if they run that default program, they're going to have the same problems, the same hassle, the same relationship curve as they have before, because it's the frameworks that drive the journey. Right, so this is probably going to sound ironic from someone who's got a website called Make Relationships Simple. So we can't get away from relationships. Like relationships, there's an inbuilt need that we want to be in relationship, so that we have this drive to relationships. But at the moment, for most people, it's confusing, it's frustrating, and it's disappointing. Now, the only route to be certain of being successful in your relationship journey is there's one secret, well, not one secret, but there's one path, which is mastery. And mastery is if you give something enough effort and you give something enough attention and enough focus and enough practice, then you're able to master what it takes. Now, all of us have had to master walking, talking, all of those things that you have to do as a human. The problem is that we've never narrowed down and focused what are the things that we need to do in a relationship. And this is why it's so important to focus on the context and not the content, because it's endless amounts. Okay, so mastery is about focusing on a few things that matter. So who can drive? Okay. And so driving is like a skill. It's really frustrating when you get it through, but once you get it, you can kind of do it on autopilot. So who drives on autopilot? Okay. Who's treated their relationships on autopilot? Okay. I don't think we have any pilots, do we? Okay, I don't think so. Although, Stephen, I think you're looking a little bit like a pilot. Right, I'm just going to share a quick video with you. What's involved in flying a plane? Okay. You probably still can't hear it, but I'm still getting the noise from that. Okay. So my guess is that flying a plane is a bit like flying a car, but just on steroids. As in, there's a steeper learning curve and you have to be constantly aware. So you have to be a lot more sensitive. You have to be a lot more aware, like when you're going off course. And that's really the key distinction to a successful relationship journey and a less successful journey, is that you have to pay attention to what nurtures the connection and what feeds the connection. All right. So,
Rob, were you going to give us more clarification on what connection is?
sorry, my volume's really low. Can you say that again?
Yeah, were you going to give us more clarification on what connection is? Because you said ultimately what we're seeking in a relationship is connection.
Okay. Okay, so what do you think connection is?
I think it's being seen, heard, valued, and affirmed for who you truly, authentically are.
When is the time when you felt most connected to someone? Or like not necessarily one incident, but when do you feel most connected? And anyone in the chat sharing and or jumping.
When I feel seen and heard and validated.
So it's when you're who you are, and it's when you see someone for who they are. When someone lets down a mask and lets you in. And so it's that basic thing of accepted and feeling joined with someone, like you feel you're in it with them. So we're going to talk, I'm not sure if it's tomorrow or Wednesday, we're going to talk about like what, I'm going to talk about what I call deliciously nutritious relationships. Right, I just have something like a little task for you to think about. I'm just going to share this screen. You can imagine that this is, so here we've got, if you think about the most significant relationship you've been in, and so it goes from a range from hell to miserable to unhappy to stale to bickering to comfortable to loving to being blissful. And you think about year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, 6, 7 to 10. Right, where were you in year 1? Where were you in year 2, year 3? And plot what was the relationship curve. So I'm going to give you 2 minutes. 2 minutes to think that through of your most significant relationship. What was the curve?
Start in year 1. Loving. By year 10, miserable.
So when did it start to drop?
Year 3 maybe.
And how far did it drop from loving?
To unhappy, then miserable by year 10. I would never describe it as being hell, but miserable.
Yeah.
Actually, I don't even know if I went through those stages going down. Maybe I did. I just felt like I was in a state of suspended animation.
Yeah, it doesn't, you don't necessarily have to pass through all the stages, but because the curve can go sharper, it can go.
Yeah, it's just a state of, as I said, suspended animation, maybe.
There is
Rob, when you say change the frame, change the game, does framework mean your beliefs?
Yeah, it's the set of beliefs and assumptions.
Okay, thanks.
I actually wasn't intending to share this. I was going to get the worksheet printed out, but I ran out of time. So this was my notes. Okay, and then I'm going to show you this one. So where are you on that scale? And you don't need to share, but just so that you're aware. So bitter is when you get angry at men or women. Or it's like when you label people time wasters or losers. Despair is when you feel like giving up on dating and relationships. Frustration is when you get angry at the environment. So it's like being frustrated at dating apps. It's like being frustrated at this person. It's being frustrated at the situation. Confused is like feeling like you missed the memo about how dating relationships work, about your partner. So clarity is when you can see the next steps and where you're going. Capacity is when you feel ready to find a partner and make a relationship work. And competent is you could go out and find a partner and make a relationship work now. And confident is 100% certain that you can have the relationship that you want.
Rob, what have you written there where it says bitter, the one at the end? Do you get angry at?
Okay, so that's
men, women.
Angry at men, women. So it's like, this is like red pill theory where men hate women and there's like the ones where women hate men.
Okay, what does that word say at the end? The what?
It's where people are calling each other like, oh, they're time wasters or losers.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Has everyone got a location for themselves? So there's one I did notice, which is a common one. And this is what is central for the idea today, is that what's really important is that it's a relationship, it's your relationship journey. It's not about the relationship. People usually feel stuck and frustrated because they feel that their relationship success depends on the other person. There is a whole world out there. There's a whole, the whole, like dating sites are a microcosm of life. So they have every type of life. But your success depends on how you navigate through it. It doesn't depend on the other person, because you decide how you respond to that person. So you don't know. So if, and this is why a lot of people fixate on one person, that they want to have a relationship with this one person, but you're always stuck, because if that's the person you're navigating around, then you're stuck. Like if they're tethered to the ground and you want to be here, you can't move, because then you're dependent on them. But when you understand that the world, like there's never been more single people, there is everyone that you could want to meet. So it's about how you navigate through that relationship. And so it's your journey, because it's really about how you connect to other people. Because while you make it about the relationship, that every relationship ends. It ends in death, or it ends in a breakup. And so while you're reliant on making this relationship the thing, then you're trying to contain and control something. And this is why so many people try to control the other person, because they're trying to manage, because you can't manage when you've got two fixed points. If the only fixed point is you navigating your way to being happy, then you can navigate that. But when you have a fixed point, you're stuck. Okay. Is it normal for those feelings to be rapidly up and down? Yes. It is normal. The normal curve is kind of up and down, but there is always the point between. This is basically the graph between connection and disconnection, and it's always up and down. So connection is a dynamic thing, and this is where the metaphor, like the analogy with the lottery, because people want to win the lottery because they don't want to have to worry about money anymore. But the problem is that when you have money, you have to worry about losing money. When you have money, you have to worry about who wants your money and who wants you. And so there's all these extra stresses. So the fantasy of winning the lottery is an escape from the challenge of life, of survival, of feeling secure. The fantasy of meeting the one and everything working out is an escape from the challenge of being in the world and being connected. Because the real challenge of connection is that we go through life wanting what we want, and everyone else is going through life wanting what they want. And it's when people are kind of blinkered and they don't change what they want, that it becomes about controlling others. Because you get stuck in this. So what typically happens in a typical relationship journey is you get stuck in this thing. I want this, they want this. And so it becomes control to get what you think you need to be happy. Whereas when you're more open to the journey, it's letting go of what that whole journey is about, letting go of what you think will make you happy for what you really find will make you happy. We've covered quite a bit, but we've covered 3 central ideas. We've covered the idea that it's about the relationship journey, that connection is more important than a relationship, that the key to relationships is nurturing the connection by sensitivity and awareness. And the key is in piloting the plane, not driving the car, because driving the car is really sit back, I know how to do this, I don't have to pay attention. Piloting the plane is you can know what you need to do, but you need to be monitoring all of these things. And that's, the analogy breaks down a little bit where it seems overwhelming because it seems like a full-time thing, but it's the having the sensitivity to recognize. So typically most people go from being unhappy in a relationship, unhappy in a marriage, to ending the marriage, and the average is 6 years. Right? If you're really sensitive, in those 6 years, you've picked up on enough that you could change it or get out of it earlier. So relationships don't end in like a flash, and it can seem that lots of relationships end because someone cheats, because someone stops talking, because someone loses interest, because someone betrays, because all these things that are the thing that break the relationship. But that behavior came because they were already below, under the line. That's not to say, like, sometimes people will be above the line and they'll still cheat, okay? Because sometimes people don't come to a relationship without willing to be vulnerable, without integrity, without empathy and respect, and without kindness. But though all of those behaviors are behaviors of below the line, they're what drain the relationship. So the actual incident that ends most relationships usually happens sometime after it's been in the drain, the relationship. Because if someone is really happy and satisfied in a relationship, they don't want to leave the relationship. Because if something's enhancing your life, if it's enriching your life, you want that to continue. Okay, so the 3 lessons. Connection is more important than relationship. It's about the relationship journey. Nurture the relationship, and pilot a plane rather than drive the car. So what I want to do is I'm going to open the breakout rooms for 5 minutes. And it's not going to be a group, but as much as it can be, it's going to be 2 people. So that you have a chance to connect to someone and to talk about how you feel, how this applies to you, what insights you have, and what you can share with someone else. So today has been about one key idea, that it's really connection that we're after, and relationship is the vehicle to get that connection. So the key idea is that it's a relationship journey. Now, most of the frustrations and confusion people have is because relationships seem to be dependent on what other people do. This is why most wives moan about their husbands, most husbands moan about their wives and partners, because we feel trapped. We feel like we're dependent on what the other person does. But it isn't. People will do what people do. All of life is out there. Like, you have to be in a relationship with all kinds of different people, and dating apps are a microcosm of life. So you have every type of person. What matters is how you navigate your journey. It's not what they do, it's how you respond, what you accept, who you decide to connect with, on what level you can connect with. So the age of control, I say, like relationships, we've come from the age of control because it was all about controlling the other person to do what I need them to do. But you navigate as to whether it enriches you or it drains you. Does it bring you more connection or disconnection? So when you're with someone that shows you that you can build something with and you can have connection, then you need to be like Facebook and obsess about nurturing that connection. You have to be like a pilot and be sensitive to all the warning signs that you're veering off course. Because most of us have driven through relationships on autopilot, and we've driven 50 miles without even being aware of the warning signals. So connection is the goal of the game. But let there be no mistake that this is a solo journey. Your relationship journey is yours alone. Now, the frustrations and the feelings of helplessness that people have is because they feel in relationship and that they're held back with someone else. Your journey is how you navigate what other people do, not in controlling, manipulating, cajoling, or trying to make someone like you. So if you play the game well, it's because you have the clarity to know what to do. You'll have the capacity to do it, the competence to make it work, and the confidence to know that you don't need a specific relationship because you can always make a relationship work. Because when you look at the world, there's never been as many single people. There's never been as much access to single people who even show what they're looking for. So it's all about how you devote your time, your effort, your attention. And if you focus on the right things, then you can't help but win. So the 3 key lessons. Connection is more important than relationship. Nurture the relationship. And pilot the plane, don't drive a car. Now, for the good students, and we met some of the bad students in the breakout rooms, think about where that pilot in the plane, they're like looking at wind temperature. I don't know, piloting is like way above my ability to comprehend, but they're looking at wind turbulence, they're looking at other scientific stuff that I don't understand. So what are the factors? What are the things you want to be monitoring in a relationship? Because the problem of that analogy is it can seem overwhelming. And the message I'm wanting to get from the piloting is that level of, this is off course, bring it back on course. How do you know? What are the things to be looking for in a relationship to know when it's on course and when it's off course? So that's your homework. Tomorrow we're meeting again. Okay, before I go, does anyone want to share any insights, any perspectives, any?
I was going to suggest that we could go around the room and give your key takeaways. That way we could all solidify our learning and maybe pick up something from each other.
Yeah, that's I think that's a very good idea. So, okay, would it be better if I call on, so then I've got an organizing screen. Janos, you're first person next to me.
Well, what personally I can see, most of the times we are not really present and we are afraid how others are seeing us. We shouldn't be afraid. We should be just ourselves, because we want to know the package from the beginning, even if it's not that great, because we are humans. That's okay. There is nobody perfect, and nobody should be think like that.
I want to thank you, Janos, actually, because you always have a consistent message of be present. And I had when I was looking at what I'm going to talk about in the deliciously nutritious relationships part, and I had, like those who've seen it before, it's like integrity, respect, kindness, and respect wasn't quite right because respect has some people see respect differently. And what in my mind was Janos saying be present. I'm going, yeah, it's that. But so yeah, I want to thank you for helping me with that. Sam, any thoughts, perspectives?
Yeah, I think that the connection, the relationship is the vehicle for the connection rather than it being about the relationship. The connection is so much more important, and how we need to put our energies there and to be able to realize when it is going off course and what we need to do to bring it back.
Thank you. Sarah.
Yeah, I agree with Janos. It's about being present at the end of the day. And just being who you are and understanding your self-worth. And if you don't understand your own self-worth, then you're not going to understand your own journey and who you truly are, and where you're going.
Yeah. For me, the biggest problem of relationships is that the world teaches us that we're not good enough, and we take that into relationships. And because we start with someone else's framework, and it's a framework that makes us small and weak. So yeah, I agree. Stephen.
Yeah, it's a funny thing you said about piloting. I used to work at Airbus, so the startup procedure I have done in a A320, and I've also flown a glider. And the difference is, as you said, analogy with driving is there. When you're driving, your subconscious is driving. Your subconscious, you're switched off, you're not conscious. And what they say is that that's when you're driving the best and that you're most responsive. If an incident happens or something happens, your subconscious reacts far more quickly than your conscious does. And that consciousness is essential when you're learning. So I've done dancing, partner dancing, and when you're learning the moves, you can't be subconscious because you don't know what they are, and you're conscious, and it's all very awkward and difficult. And then when you've learned them, then your subconscious takes over. But where you're correct is that you need to monitor what you're doing, because if you've programmed your subconscious incorrectly, then that's when things are going off the rails. And the other problem is that we fall into patterns of behavior. So the relationship that failed before is going to be the same relationship approach that's going to fail you in the future, unless you relearn that. But the relearning process isn't easy. So I think those are some comments. I think Janos's comment was like much simpler and really insightful about being present, by which he means being there rather than being just being yourself and being there and giving the other person space, and being aware of the situation rather than being self-aware, if you see what I mean. Which makes a lot of sense to me, because that's being relaxed. But I rather think myself that you have to interact. So you could be the person in a relationship that's messing it up, but equally it could be the other person. And it's that interaction, that corrective process, that's really difficult. At least that's what I find. So in other words, most being older, I'm meeting people that are older, and they've had that learning to mess up relationships. They've been through relationships that have failed. It's always a mutual responsibility. To me, responsibility is kind of important, and trying to guide somebody else into a good relationship is the difficulty. That's my insights into this.
And we're on a roll of S's. Sandra.
I think we need to accept that we are always learning, and so we are constantly changing, we are evolving as individuals, and that we bring those changes and those nuances into a relationship. And it's our responsibility to ourselves, to as individuals, to not be afraid of change and not apologize for our evolution. But we need to be aware of the, I don't want to call it disruption, but the effect that it can have on a partner as the relationship moves forward. But also of concern is, to me, is not being heard. When you stop being heard, but also on the other side, when I stop hearing, then communicate, because it's a two-way street, and there comes a time when you can get to the point where you feel, why bother? And as it also speaks to what Janos is saying, being present. And if you're not present, you won't hear. And if you don't hear, then communication breaks down. And to me, if communication breaks down, then you are not only doing yourself a disservice, the other person a disservice, but you're also doing yourself a disservice, because what you need to get to enhance the relationship, you're not getting, because you're not able to respond as you ought to if you were listening to your partner.
Okay, thank you. Betty.
Yeah, thanks for sharing everything today, Rob. I've learned quite a bit. My key takeaways for today is that relationships are about connection, and that the relationship is the vehicle for connection and not the goal itself. And that underpinning that is authenticity, which is to say being your true self, which is the opposite of believing that you're not good enough. And to have the courage to be vulnerable and accept our flaws and not be a perfectionist. And also that a relationship is a dynamic space between us that we need to invest the time and effort to tend to it, otherwise it will die like a plant.
Okay. I was really thinking, like, from the beginning, the word honesty was coming to me very often, and also awareness, because the way I look at myself and why I joined this group is to learn, and I'm continuing to learn. And what I've learned from my past relationships during the present time is that I see a lot of behavior sometimes surfacing, and I am more aware of what is triggering it. And sometimes it's not the other person, it's within me, and things that don't have nothing to do with the person in front of me. And being able to see that and be honest about it to other person, and being able to communicate and being aware of it is what helps me to grow and be more connected to the other person, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Thank you. I'm going to butcher your name, but Ray. Ray, sorry.
Okay, I'm coming. I don't know. We should talk about the lessons we have gained today, or
yeah. Well, what's anything that you would want to share briefly of how you felt or what you thought?
Yes, actually, I really agree about the connection theory of today's lessons, but I've got let's say a personal question. That's sometimes I feel like people who are good at making connections are very rare to find. So it's not only about our own effort to make, it's also about to find the right person. I also always feel like the right persons are not so easy to find. And personally, I feel like, let's say I can try to make some connections to other people, but the feedbacks from other people are always not enough to me. So let's say that's my some personal my sharing.
So it's a relationship is about other people, but it's about navigating to the ones you can build the connection with and away from the ones, or not away from, but it's you connect to people at the level of which they let you connect.
Yes, but I feel like it's not so easy to find. That's my main personal question.
Lucy.
I guess for me, the important kind of reminder was the autopilot that really, like, even if we are in a quite fresh relationship, it's still like there are points when we are kind of subconsciously not really thinking about what we are doing that much and not being that kind of attentive, not giving the full attention to something also. So it's a good reminder of that, and being present. And also like the connection. I remembered some things from the previous, like as you mentioned it also this session, that it's like what was important message for me. I think most important of the sessions also previously was that the openness and like how much connection I can make depends on how much both of us let the other person in. I think that was really important for me because people were really, before I had my first relationship, they were kind of like giving me that ideas like I need to play some games, I need to like be mysterious, I need to hide something, so they have always something to discover, and I didn't quite feel it right. I didn't want to do it, and I'm glad I didn't do it in this relationship, and then my partner isn't doing it, I hope. So yeah, and I think that ties well to the idea of not good enough as well, like that you always feel like you need to make the mysteries but also make yourself look better and everything, but it's gonna inevitably fall apart if you are gonna live together for a long time, or like if you are seeking the deep connection, it will uncover that you are pretending something.
Thank you. And Gina.
The thing I think I learned today is something that is close to me. Being a logical thinker, you said something that I even underlined. You said that navigating a relationship is not about how we feel logically, rather it is how it is. I felt that to be able to understand relationship, I should be able to master the mastery of the relationship and the journey, because maybe most of the time I'm missing a connection because I'm too logical rather than being too connective. What do I mean? Maybe I have this list that I'm logically following rather than to be open to understand this person for who they are and what they can offer and what I can offer and what I can serve them and how they can serve me and how together this relationship journey can be fulfilling to all of us. I think that is something that I'll reflect on for this week and see how I can become a master by going and rewiring my current thinking. Thank you.
Thank you. Nicole.
Hello. I think honesty and mutuality is important. So both of you being honest with yourself and each other, so that you can grow together, basically, and for both of you to be willing and wanting to put in the same amount of effort, I guess, to move it to that new level of connection.
Thank you. Julie.
I don't know if I can make a contribution really, because as you know, I joined late tonight, so I came in part way through. So I'm not 100% sure what I take from this evening, Maybe the connection, I don't know. I've just come out of a 2.5-year relationship. He ended the relationship with me 2 weeks ago, and I'm still trying to come to terms with it. Very sad, and I guess I'm hoping that joining these sessions will help me to understand where perhaps I went wrong.
Okay, sorry to hear about that.
Thank you.
I think most of us who are on the call have been through, we all kind of know that time after a breakup, where it's always difficult. But having seen lots of people go through it, for many people, it's like the point where it felt like everything was over, but then later they find that it's kind of a turning point that you look back on, and it can be for the best, where
so.
you go on to something else. And last but not least, Fei Wu.
Hello. I have a different take on whether we are good enough. I think we are good enough that we should be ourselves, be honest to ourselves, and not try to be anyone else. But we are not, our current form is not good enough. We should strive to be the best that we can be always. And I also happen to believe there is the one for us. Might not be what we expected, what we wanted, but will be exactly what we needed, what we need.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. And hope to see you tomorrow night. Same time, same Zoom link. Have a good day. Good night and good day. See you tomorrow.
Cheers, Rob.
Thank you so much, Rob. See you tomorrow.
Bye.